So this is Bobby Mink with Choice Consulting and Management, and we want to welcome you and thank you for joining us at Choices Create Change podcast. And we are super excited and blessed to have Carrie Rogers, speaker, business coach, author, currently finishing her book, Culture is a System, Not a Slogan. So thanks for joining us, Carrie.
Hey, Bobby. Great. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited about this today.
Yeah. So let's jump in. You can tell us a little bit about you and your journey, maybe a little bit about some of the companies you've worked for, the companies you're running now, and some of your experiences and some of your journey, just so we can get a glimpse into who you are and the journey you've been on.
Well, Bobby, how much time do we have? Way back when. Yeah. So, my journey started really in an interesting spot. And it's important to say, even though it was a few days ago, and that was I spent 5 years as a United States Marine. And, I tell people about our military service that we're still becoming adults in that period of time. So I actually really became who I am in the United States Marine Corps. And it has a profound impact on what I do for everything and how I do things. And so I think it's important to just kind of lay that out there that's where the root of it all started. And so from that journey, it was a little bumpy road until I landed here in Metro Atlanta. We came to Metro Atlanta in 98, I think. And at 2004 is when I actually really got my foot on the ground and really started working on some things. And I was working for a residential home builder in Metro Atlanta. Now it was really a fortunate position, which you'll see as it plays out in the rest of my life, is that this was really in a startup season, Bobby. So I was the first full-time employee at that company. Right. And so I had the opportunity to grow this company and grow with this company for more than 16 years and really see the entrepreneurial side of it as well as all of the business side of it. That gave me an opportunity to develop departments. I came in a purchasing department and I developed a marketing department. I developed a warranty department, and really got to put all of those things into play. And, you made mention of my book that I'm working on. And at this company, this is where I really learned the importance of culture and how
Yes.
culture can really make a difference. And it's so important
Yes.
to have. And so, it's interesting. My journey comes to a really significant pivot in 2020. And I think I'm not the only one. But literally 4 days before my birthday in 2020 is when the government shut down. And I found myself as the 50-year-old with no work. I was out of work. And, so what it was is in 2020, I decided to move on from that company that I've been working with for so long and kind of go out on my own. And then, as I was interviewing or looking for other things, that's when the world kind of shut down, gave everybody a chance to pause and regroup and figure out what they wanted to do. And so between, from then onward, I've done a multitude of things. I've did some teaching at Kennesaw State University, which I absolutely loved. I was in the construction management department. I've done some coaching in construction and residential construction. I did that for a couple of years. It was heavy travel. It was great. And then if we just jump backwards a few years, in 2015, I started a side gig with my husband. And it's really funny we call it a side gig. And that is a full service restaurant. So we jumped into the restaurant business in 2015. And so in the mid 2020s, I really decided to take some time and focus on the restaurant. And so we've been running the restaurant now for about 11 years. And at this point, we have a second location and we have a food truck. So I've sort of been a lot of different places, Bobby. It's been a journey.
Yes. And so what are some things that you would like to tell new business owners? Maybe they've been in a career and they feel like there's a time now, it feels like something to change, or maybe it's time to change. What could you share about starting out a new company, or maybe what you've learned as your journey's changed through the years?
Well, I'm going to give a free plug to an organization called the Small Business Development Center, SBDC. It's a spin off of UGA, and it is from the SBA, the government SBA. And this is an organization that has highly qualified free business coaches. And Bobby, I'll tell you, when it comes to the restaurant business and shifting significantly from construction to restaurant, we went to the Small Business Development Center, got a coach. It was the best thing I ever did.
Oh.
All of the questions, they can answer them all. And I think one of the things that's really important about the SBDC is that they know the capital providers. So one of the struggles that we've had over the years is trying to figure out capital. And it took me a long time to understand that the SBDC had capital. And well, they don't have capital, but they've got the connections, and they can help your organization become bank ready and things that you don't think about as a new business owner.
Yes.
So to me, the SBDC is a really big plug and something I want to make sure everybody knows about.
Yes. So what would you say are 5 top lessons that you've learned as an entrepreneur, as a company owner, that you'd like to share with other business owners that you've seen or experienced in your journey?
Well, number one, hire the right people. And I think even whether we have a business or we're just working in the work world, we understand that, hire the right people. And I'll tell you why. So in 2015, when we decided to start a restaurant, my husband and I went into this with big dreams, lofty goals, and a lot of passion and zero experience. He always says, yeah, we had a lot of experience in the restaurant business, and that is we used to eat at a lot of them. And so, hiring the right people is so important. And so the first general manager that we hired was pinnacle to our start. I know today that most restaurants take 18 to 24 months to go from conception to open. And we did it in 7. And so, we gave up some things for that, but hiring that right person, that very first person that was the right person, I think was really, really important for us. So that I think is the number one thing. I think number 2, cash is king. I said a little bit about finance and finding capital and the importance of using other people's money to grow your business. And so that can be a whole podcast we can talk about what I've learned in the world of finance, because there's not a lot of information out there for business owners. But cash is king, and if you have cash, you can always get capital. And I think we need to understand the difference between cash and capital. And so just remember cash is king and hold on to your cash and use other people's money to do all of your financing and everything that you need. It's really, really the smartest way. I think maybe processes. I know that you're really hot on processes too. I think I've learned a lot from you on processes as it is. But I think that I've come to understand, particularly in the restaurant business, that nothing moves the needle faster than good processes.
Mm,
And there's a process for everything, right? And I think, I've worked with a lot of people. And of course, when I was doing the consulting for construction, we really worked hard on processes too. And I think people are overwhelmed when they think about how do I define what my process is? And so, if you want, we can talk a little bit about how to lay out a process.
yes.
All right. So here's what I like to do is I like to gather the team together. And let's say there are 4 people in the process and we've got to move some documents. This is a great one because documents end up stuck on people's desks or in their inboxes. And we got to move documents from person A to person D. And so we have the 4 people in the room and I give them each a different colored sticky and a blank wall. And I say, you need to write down every step that you need to do in order to move this document from here to here. Where's your piece in it? And oftentimes we find that it starts here and it goes here and it goes here and then it goes back to here and it goes over here and back to here. And if I can get the team together and I can visually lay it out on a blank wall, suddenly they start to see and understand how the process works. And it identifies where your bottlenecks are. It identifies where you can do things better. I mean, many times we've gone through processes like this where we can figure out that person B has 3 different things to do and they think it has to move on from them before they can do it. We just reorganize what we do and it gets the person B to get it all done and they move it on. And so I think, we tend to be overwhelmed when we think about creating processes, but it doesn't have to be. It just doesn't have to be overwhelming. Just break it
That's
down.
right. That's right. That's right.
Now,
You got 2 more? Or you got 2 more?
Yeah. Oh, I got a few more. Yeah. I said,
Okay.
You cannot succeed without accountability. Right. And
Yes.
accountability always starts at the top, doesn't it? The good old saying, the buck stops with me. Accountability always starts at the top. But here's how it works is once you have your processes in place, now you've got a significant accountability tool because you've got every step written down about what has to be done and who has to do it where. So when you talk about accountability, you talk about processes, you can morph right into how you do your employee reviews, right? Employee reviews used to be one of the things that, just pull my nails out instead, please. Because employee reviews can really tend to get emotional and they can get over personal. But if you've got your processes and systems in place, now you've got an accountability tool and your reviews are strictly based on performance. And it's easy peasy lemon squeezy.
Yes. Yes.
Accountability.
You can give me one more, but I'm going to go back. Like when we
Okay.
finish, I'm going to go back to some of these because I think there's gold in what we're saying.
Sure. Let's
So give me one more.
All right. Your favorite one. Leaders must have clarity.
Ooh.
I know Bobby loves clarity. I learned a lot from you about clarity, Bobby, and I can see too, and I'll just be really transparent. I can see when clouds are in my vision, I see how it impacts the organization. And so, having clarity, I know what I want, I know where I want to go, but then the next step in clarity is to be able to communicate that. And I think we got to learn how to communicate where our clarity is so our team knows that we've got clear vision and we know where we're going. So those are my 5.
Yes.
That
Okay.
sounds
So
fun.
tell me, because getting to do this all over the country with all kinds of organizations, I mean, you're just checking the boxes of what the typical organization and owner and leadership team is struggling with. And what I have found is, at least a lot of my clients are usually mid to small,
Mhm.
right? And so maybe 5 employees to 25 employees or something. Everybody's crazy busy and whatever, but they haven't taken the time to start doing the things that you've just shared. Like, for what have you noticed about companies that are struggling on hiring the right people? What do you think is keeping us from moving toward that?
I think we don't know what we need. I think there's a job description and that's on paper. So you've got to have some technical tools. I think a lot of us want to hire for experience and not for character. And if you're building an organization where you're trying to create culture that's important, you have to find the right fit for the team because everything else is trainable. Everything else is trainable. And honestly, like in the restaurant business, more often than not, I'd rather have a server who has no experience
That's right.
than one who comes with all kinds of bad habits,
That's right. Well, I
right?
think John Maxwell's the one that said, "Find a rock star and hire him."
Yeah,
And then you're gonna have to
absolutely.
figure out then you have to figure out what to do with them, right?
Right.
And so one of the things, in fact, I just taught a leadership class here in Atlanta yesterday to 15 company owners, and one of the things we talked about was this very thought, this very process of hire the heart, hire integrity, hire drive, hire self-motivation, hire all those traits, and then look at the resume, right?
Right.
Because what I notice is a lot of guys or a lot of girls, company owners have been hiring resumes and they're on their 13th person in 3 years.
Right.
Like, it's not working. And so, but I also challenge the room, and I don't think it's very expensive anymore because of AI. You need to get some tools that will help you. We are not gifted generally to manage all of that interview process and understand the body language. We're just, a lot of visionary leaders are not gifted that way. We're like, let's go, just hire the guy out. Let's make this happen. And so, how do we find some tools that are affordable and not too troublesome that can help us try to make sure we get the right person first and then the skill set that we can train?
Right. There's a couple things that we do. Number one thing that I did that improved our hiring significantly was I changed the questions of the interview. So you need to work with, and I think, artificial intelligence, this is a great way to use artificial
Ooh,
intelligence, is to
yes.
work with an AI to, let the AI know what your culture is about and who you're hiring and what you're looking for, and have AI help you come up with quality questions that will really help you peek into the character and the quality of the person you're interviewing. And I think too, certain organizations, or even like in our restaurant business at executive levels, I think using a personality profiler like the DISC, the DISC, I think if you have that executed within your organization and you understand it, then that's obviously a very important tool. And that tool, will help you figure out what you're looking for. Like, for example, in the DISC, the developer, the driven, well, that's a manager for me, right?
Yes.
The I, that's a server for me. And even
Yes.
an S is a server for me. And a
Yes.
C, that's my accountant, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I mean it's easy peasy. You take a look at that and you look at what the disc profile will show you about a person, and you say, well, that's the kind of character and that's the kind of qualities that I need in this person. Well, send them the profile, test them out.
That's right.
I
Well,
mean,
and I
if it
think
match,
from
great. If they don't match, you got to be willing to let them go.
which is a whole different conversation. We'll get that on the next podcast when we hang out. But one of the things you notice is it's a new thought in a lot of locations for a lot of people. And I think if they could understand, I worked at a very large organization here in Atlanta for 20 years. And one of the things that that company developed was the process of hiring and onboarding people. There was a very intentional box that they figured out through the years. Every time we hire outside of these parameters of integrity and or just all these traits, every time it's not when, but how fast will this person be leaving? Because
Right,
they figured out as an organization, these skill sets, these traits, these passions, these behaviors fit with
right.
us, right? All right, let me ask you another one.
Hmm.
How do we get cash Like, how do we keep cash and have it around? I have several clients right now that are really, really struggling because the monthly, number, they're not getting enough income for outflow, and they don't really have a rainy day 6-month or 9-month or 12-month fund that
Right.
helps them ride the ups and downs. So any advice?
Well, cash is king, and cash can flow through your fingertips so fast. And I will tell you, one of the lessons I've learned is managing your cash flow is the most important thing you can do. And quite honestly, if you study your cash flow enough, moving payment dates of regular invoices can make or break you. They really can. If you know that you've got regular sources of revenue coming in, you've got regular expenses going out, you need to get them lined up in the month so that you're not shorted and your cash is constantly flowing. That's why they call it cash flow. Beyond that, we gotta start with cash. Okay. So when you get ready to start your business, and I think the thing that's important to talk about too, Bobby, is every business is different. If you're going to be a sole proprietor and it's just you, there's a certain amount of cash that you need. But if you need people and you need to hire and you're going to scale, there's a different kind of cash that you need for that. And so I think you need to know with what kind of business that you're working in, what kind of capital you need. So a restaurant doesn't need the same kind of capital that a home builder needs by a long shot, right? A home builder is so capital intensive, and a restaurant is not so much capital intensive, but we still need capital. We still got to find it. So
That's right.
For me, my experience was the credit unions, the local banks, and then the nationals, in that order, are the best sources for finding capital. The credit unions and the local banks, they want to be partners in the local community. And so getting capital from them is probably the easiest way. And the big lesson is to not fill out any forms on the internet for anybody. Okay. Take my word from it. My phone number has gotten stolen, and that was 2.5 years ago. And the day it was stolen, I had 180 phone calls. I kid you not. 180 phone calls on one day. And it's still happening. So, that's there. Let's go back to the Small Business Development Center again and making sure that we're working on banking relationships. We're working with legitimate companies, not just throwing stuff on the wall to see if it sticks. Because trust me, you don't want the results of it.
And I think one of the key things you said that I see as a struggle around the country is knowing your numbers. It's one of the biggest things that we discover as I start working with organizations is we've just gotten here however we gotten here, right?
Right.
But I'm not really at a place where somebody on the team has figured out how to produce the kind of reports that I need. And I'm not even sure I know the kind of reports I need. And so I think part of your suggestion is cash is king, and knowing what's coming. You said moving payments around. That means I got to know something. I got to know when payments are going. I got to know when checks are coming in. And so I think one of the opportunities, if you're listening to this podcast with us, one of the opportunities is figuring a way to start watching and measuring what's happening in your organization. I don't care if you're one person or 100 people, because it's rampant.
Right.
All
And
right,
I'll
the
tell
next
you,
one.
well, hold
Go
on.
ahead.
There's one more on this we need to talk about. And I think this is really underutilized in the industries, in all business, is the difference between financial accounting and managerial accounting. So this is a discovery along the way, right? I came into business understanding how to read a P&L, how to read a balance sheet, and all of those sort of things. But the aha moment comes when you stop and you ask yourself, at what day in the month does my P&L actually show up? And for 99% of the people listening, it's going to be on day 10 or after. Okay. A P&L is nothing but a historical document. It's 10 days after the month is over. Once you have the numbers in your hand and you look at it, you go, oh my God, we spent too much in labor. Can you do anything about it? Nope. It's gone. So you have to develop systems of managerial accounting. So for example, in the restaurant business, we work on a 4-week period, and we have a system in place that reports every single day what our food costs were, what our sales were, what our labor was. And that's what the managers see hour by hour, day by day, to be able to know that real world example, today's Friday. I happen to know that today in my biggest restaurant, we are on par with labor, which means we had some good days where we didn't overspend our labor. But I could have told you last week at this time, we might have been over par in our labor. And what does that mean? That means the manager working today needs to cut kitchen staff sooner rather than later, get them off the clock, because they've got today, tomorrow, and Sunday to make a difference before that's locked in and payroll's done.
Well, it's what a great segue, because one of the things when you talked about processes really move the needle. So
Mhm.
most of us have allowed ourselves to be too busy to slow down enough to really spend time on doing that. Because the next thing you said was, when you do that, they start to see and understand. And you just use an example. When we have our numbers right and it's in front of our face, our managers see and know their numbers, right? So to me, that's huge. The ownership and allowing the team in. I was talking to an owner in Louisiana, and we talked about, Bobby, I'm having to do this and I'm having to do this, and it takes forever and we should be moving faster. And I said, if you'll share that with your team and let them in
Mhm.
that you're on this kind of an island, and they can feel the weight, you'll be amazed at what some of that team will do after that meeting. They're going to tap you on the shoulder going, "Hey, could I help you?" Right? And so I think the statement for me on processes is, as they start to see and understand, which you mentioned clarity, and we're headed there in a minute. That's part of what's been missing, is I don't really understand,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
The next one was accountability is how you succeed. It starts at the top, but processes create clarity. And one of the things we said at our leadership session yesterday was, you really need to figure out how to measure, which was speaks exactly to cash flow. You need to figure out how to measure, so I know how I'm doing when I'm on your team. So which means I know if I'm doing well or not well. In most places it's conversational, not measurable, and you can't manage conversation. So um processes create clarity. That was huge.
what's a
And then
driver?
yes.
I
And
mean,
then the last one you said was, leaders must have clarity, which is also one place where we struggle. But once I do, we also haven't figured out a way to communicate it well.
right.
So, one of the things we said yesterday is, everybody on the team needs to know why.
Mhm.
What am I doing that's contributing to where we're trying to go as an organization? And so, and maybe you could just speak into all of that for just a second before we go to the next question.
So, one of the things that's interesting in my journey, having come out of the military, is, in the military, we just do. We don't ask questions, right? And one of the first things I discovered as I transitioned out of the military is that the rest of the world doesn't function that way. And your team functions way better if you can tell them why it's important for them. Absolutely. Here's a prime example, right? In the restaurant industry, we teach our servers to do something called upsell. You've experienced it all the time. Would you like a medium or would you like a large? Would you like dessert with that? Do you need, an extra side of mayo? Whatever the case may be. And they just servers, like everybody, they just need to understand why. And so if
Yes.
you explain to a server in simple terms, look, if you add an extra $5 piece of pie on there, that's $5 that goes on your total check, which means your entire tip just went up, because that's the way our world works. And so just a simple thing like that, explaining to a server why I'm asking you and why am I training you to do upsells, because it's part of the way the business functions. It's part of your responsibility, but that's not just to tell them it's your responsibility isn't enough. There has to be a reason. They have to understand what they're doing it
Right.
for. What,
Well,
why? Why do I need to do this? You know?
well, and we as parents and people running organizations or departments just say, "Look, just do it. I
Right.
I, I just told you, will you just do it?" Right? And so that that really doesn't work in the current culture we're in. And I had a guy at a class ask me once, going, "How do you get dang millenniums to work?" And I was asking him questions about his vision and his mission and values and job descriptions. And he's like, "No, no, no, no. I don't have any of that." And I'm like,
Well, there's your
"Dude,
problem.
look, I know millennials that'll stay up all night to get the project done. So you can't, Gen Zs spinning on an Excel spreadsheet going, I think I can make this better, right?" But it's because they understand why.
Hmm.
And when, what's Miller, that wrote the book, The Heart of Leadership. He used to be the head trainer for Chick-fil-A, Mark Miller.
Mark
He
Miller.
said,
Yeah.
when you get to their heart, you get all of them. And that's
Right.
that's us on leadership. They got
Exactly.
to have clarity in the why.
Exactly. And I'll tell you too, Bobby, one of the things that's been really interesting for me is to run the restaurant organization that provides more than just a job. So, I mean, you're familiar with our restaurant, and we do a lot more in the community than just what a typical restaurant does. For those that don't know about Rally Point, our focus is to really honor and support and encourage our veterans, their first responders, and their families. And so we go above and beyond to provide a certain level of hospitality to our entire community, but we especially love on those particular people. And I watch our employees come in, and when they get a hold of it and they understand that they're working for something that's bigger than them, Th that's one of the ways we get their heart, and they're all in, and it's amazing, and it's really special when we see somebody from the back of house because they don't interface with the customers, but when a back of house understands what they're doing, changes everything about how they function, and it's the truth, and these are the Gen Zs, and these are the millennials, and they're working for Gen X and boomers, and I mean, we can have a whole podcast about Gen X and how dysfunctional we are, and the boomers, how much they don't relate, and so, yeah, you have to help them find a place
Yes.
and find a meaning that's bigger than them.
Well, like Maxwell said, John Maxwell, everything rises and falls on leadership, and that's not generational.
Mhm.
Right? So
Right.
when we begin to move in that river of leadership, it impacts the organization, it impacts us, our family, our employees, our team, our results, our customer satisfaction. It
Ab
impacts everything. We just got to get
absolutely.
our arms around that. Okay,
Absolutely.
give us a couple of things because I know you're an ops beast, so operations is kind of one of your things. So, what are a few things you've learned on the operations side in your journey that you'd like
W
to share with us?
well, what's measured will improve. That is so cliche and so old, but it works
Woo!
every single time. Every
Yes.
single time, you know? I
Yes.
also learned too I learned in the construction company, you gotta be really careful if you're gonna incentivize monetarily for something. And the reason for that is because it works 100% of the time. But if you over incentivize one particular location, then that team member loses their focus on everything else and they just drive to where the money is. And so everything that gets measured will absolutely improve. And those things that you need to really make significant changes on, you put a monetize on them and you'll get them. And that's just human nature. But it's a, you got to be careful, right? Especially with the monetization, you got to be careful. But find a KPI. Right?
Yes.
Key performance indicators. I live and die on key performance indicators. I can tell you key performance indicators are leading indicators. You gotta be looking at leading indicators because a lagging indicator is history and you can't do anything about it.
That's right.
You gotta
Well,
have your
and if you're listening to me and Carrie and you don't know, like I've had a lot of owners go, Bobby, KPIs, like what are I've been running a company 17 years, but I don't know what really I should be measuring. And there's no embarrassment in that. You got to where you are, however you got there, right? But if you go to Choices Create Change, our website, www.choiceconsultingman.com. There's a place for comments or, leave a message. Send us a note, and me and Carrie will follow up with some tools or some suggestions or things that might be able to help you in whatever industry you're in, right?
absolutely.
Of
Mhm.
of how do you start to measure? You got one more operation thing you can share with us?
Oh my gosh, I got so many, I got so many. I think, here's something really important is, oftentimes we talk about giving our teams training. Right, and do you wanna train your team? You invest all kinds of money and train your team, and then, some operators are like, "Well, what if they leave?" And I'm always like, "Well, what if they stay and you don't train them?" But the truth of the matter is, Bobby, is that your team under stress will fall to its highest level of training.
Oh, you got to say that again.
Your team under stress will fall to its highest level of training. That's a
Oh,
Navy
that's
SEAlism. That's what the
woo.
Navy SEALs function on. That's why the Navy SEALs practice and practice and practice and train so high because they know every time they're going to go somewhere, they're going to be under stress, right? And so anything that's Pollyanna or that you think you can do that you haven't practiced over and over again or have been trained on will go right out the window under stress. And we know that business cycles ebb and flow and there's always going to be stress tomorrow. It's
Yes.
coming. You don't know what it's going to look
Yes.
like and it's coming. So I think operationally one of the things that I've seen across all industries is that we don't tend to train our teams well enough so that when the stressful times hit, they often crumble too low. And I've
Yeah.
experienced it. I've lived
Well,
it. I've experienced it. I've been part of that. So,
yes.
yeah.
And their response is, I don't know what to do, so I'm waiting for you to tell me what to do.
Oh, good
Which I
lord.
have more owners say, Bobby, can you just get them to do something? I'm like, hang on, let's talk about what we've created that they're living in.
Mhm.
I often say you need to let the accountability be in the chair that's being paid for the job, which means it was good to great. He said, great leaders and managers ask 50% more questions than we dictate. So if I can ask more questions, I can help the person in the chair with the problem figure it out, come up with a solution, own it. If it doesn't work exactly right, we can talk about it. But as soon as they say, well, Bobby told me, I just did what he said. So what are you going to do? I don't know. You have to go ask him. Like that's rampant.
Mhm. Well, and that's training, right? That's lack of training.
Yes.
That's lack of accountability. That's lack of empowering your team. It's lack of delegation, right? And it's also lack of clarity. Because if your team has clarity, even in the smoke and even in the fog, where confusion causes paralysis, if they have clarity, they've got a true north to focus on, they can at least take a step forward.
Preach. All right, you got one more?
One more. Well, we talked about teams need to know the why. I think that is really important too. And then the last one for me is customers don't come first, your people do. That's a hard one, right? That is a
Yes.
hard one. But time and time again, operation after operation, when I am in an operation or I find an operation that truly understands they need to take care of their team first, that's when they shine the best. They absolutely have to, because if you're all right, I'm a Marine. If you're going to go in battle, you need to have your team right behind you, going with you. And if you haven't taken care of them, they're going to be like, bye-bye, have a good time. I'm not coming along. You got to take care of your team. You take care of your team will take care of your customers. They will do everything. They'll go to the ends of the earth for you.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the good book says you reap what you sow.
Mm.
So if you're sowing out to customers and experiences and you're not sowing into the office or into the team, then you're setting yourself up for failure, because the customer satisfaction, the customer service, the profitability is executed through people. Well, the people of the team. So if I'm not pouring in and respecting and celebrating and noticing if they're crushing it or when they're doing a good job, which is another conversation we had yesterday in the leadership training, is we've got to figure out a way to start noticing. By the way, Martha, you did a great job of that spreadsheet. I just wanted to say it was impressive. Those little words create this tribe feeling where people are like, let's go, right? Because
Right.
somebody notices.
Mm-hmm.
And then the customer gets this amazing experience because attitude and training and vision and empowerment. And let me just solve this for you. I mean, anyway, I could preach all day, but yeah, having the team dialed in
Mm-hmm.
can produce amazing results.
Right. Right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All
Yeah.
right. How about a couple of things that you would say, please never do this?
Well, you actually just stole my thunder on the first one. And that is never, ever, ever miss an opportunity to thank your team. Never miss the
Preach.
opportunity. You know what I mean? And,
Yes.
leaders for the most part, we are so driven that celebrating is the last thing on our list. It honestly is the last thing on our list. It's so bad, Bobby, that one of my staff members carries the title of Chief Celebrations Officer.
Yes.
And that is to make sure that we are celebrating the team. Now, she can't help me find ways to thank my team. I have to be on point to do that. But we
Yes.
don't miss birthdays, we don't miss anniversaries, don't miss anything, because I made that someone's responsibility who loves to celebrate.
That's right.
It's not that I
When
don't like to celebrate. It's just that's not the top of my list where it needs to be. Just
Well,
by
it's funny because I've had a lot of owners that say, Bobby, the way I was raised, nobody ever said thank you. Nobody ever said good job.
right.
I never, ever even have the thought. And so my coaching is, yeah, but Mary, who does your accounting, is very empathetic and very pastoral. She's very much people person. You need to delegate to her once a month. Just walk down to your office going, did you tell somebody thank you? And she can go right back to work. Like if we're not good at it, it's not an excuse.
Right.
Well, Bobby, I just never think of it, so we just never do that. No, that's not good enough. I need to find somebody on my team that's how's your mom doing?
Right.
Did she get out of the hospital? How was the
Right.
soccer game? When I see that person on the team, CCO, right?
Chief Celebrations Officer.
CCO, I need to put the title on them and empower them to remind me, let's not forget our people. That's powerful. All right, give me another one.
The other one is never reprimand or redirect an employee in front of everyone else. That, praise in public, develop in private. Always. Always. And that,
You will
it's hard. Same thing. As leaders, we tend to move really, really fast. And when we're moving really, really fast, something goes sideways, we still have emotions that we have to deal with. And if that emotion just tips you a minute, it's really easy to turn and snap at that employee to try to fix whatever the problem is or redirect, or a lot of times it's just being ugly and venting, and never do that in front of your team. Never do
because
that.
what you will probably do is crush somebody, and some of those somebodies don't recover. Like sometimes you can't pull it back. Now
Right.
you can go apologize and maybe meet him later and work it out, and maybe everything will be fine, but we gotta be better than that from the jump. Like, there's people, "Okay, I'm never gonna speak up at a meeting again." Why?
Exactly.
Because of the response from the leader. So 2 years later, this person's never spoken at a meeting, and they won't let that go.
Well, you know what,
Like,
Bobby?
it's
The problem is
stuck.
it's not only them, it's everybody else who's watching, right? It's everybody else who's watching. And so if you let that happen, and then suddenly it's not just the one that you actually injured right there, it's the 5 people that witnessed it and went, whoa, okay, I ain't saying nothing, right? I ain't do nothing. And which leads me to a really important thing about culture and about your hiring practices and about the people that you keep is we always say hire fast and fire faster. Always. Always hire fast. You got to get some people in there, especially like an operation like a restaurant. You've got to have some people in there. Otherwise, it's just going to fall flat. But you got to be willing to get rid of them right away, too. And here's the thing is this is what I teach my managers all the time is your team is watching what you tolerate. Right? And so you got a superstar, but that superstar doesn't play by all the rules and you're tolerating that. How long before everybody else doesn't play by all the rules? So you've got to fix the problem or you have to eliminate the problem. You cannot just keep going and let your staff watch what you're going to tolerate.
And we need to figure out a way to start dealing with it as soon as possible, right? One of the things that happens at their annual review, I'm gonna bring it up, or, after they get back from vacation in 2 weeks, I need to see if I can't carve out a minute or a couple minutes right away. And there's a way to have this conversation. And mostly it starts with question. Wow,
Mhm.
what was going on? I felt it's not like you're an idiot. And if you ever do that again, you're fired. Okay, that is not going to work. But if I can get them to go, I just made a mistake. Really? What? Well, this and this happened. And what I've learned, Carrie, is next time that's what we want.
Right.
We want to encourage somebody that you caught yourself and we've talked through it. And now everybody else sees the manager and this person having a conversation off on the side, which is also very powerful.
Exactly. Exactly. Well,
Yes.
it's seek first to understand, then be understood.
Oh, 7
So
habits.
powerful. So powerful right there.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. So what are some takeaways you would like business owners from our session today? Some things you would really love for them to remember, um, from our time together today.
Bobby, as I traverse continually down my journey and, find myself in opportunities like this to be able to share wisdom and knowledge and give back a little bit, I think whether it's a 5-minute conversation or a 35-minute conversation, doesn't matter to me. My hope is that whoever's listening to this will pick up even one little thing because success is really won in the micro steps. In the micro changes. It's not leaps and bounds. You're not looking for a quantum leap. A quantum leap's not going to take you to success. If it does, you're going to fall backwards. But it's in the little tiny steps along the way. And so spending the time and talking with you and having, folks listen to this, if somebody takes away just one little nugget that just changes the course direction, even a half a degree, we know that
Yes.
the outcome is miles away from where they're going. And that
Yes.
would be my hope is that somebody out there has heard one little thing that will just make a significant impact for them. Just one. That's all.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much. This was amazing. A lot of great tidbits we were able to share with the people. So hopefully they'll hit us up on the website and they've got some comments or questions. We can continue to help them as much as possible. And give me a few months and we'll do this again.
Absolutely. I think we've got about 12 topics in there. We could do this about 12 times.
Yes. Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much, Carrie. Hey, this is Carrie Rogers, speaker, business coach, author. She's currently finishing up her book, Culture is a System, Not a Slogan. And this is Bobby Mink, Choices Create Change podcast. And we want to thank you so much for joining us. Take what you've heard today and let's go crush it.